Yeah, we do that all the time.
uh, Morning or good afternoon, geez. Good morning or good afternoon. I've been saying good morning all day. Someone asked me this afternoon where I was working from. Okay, Nicole, are you on here?
Here.
She was earlier. I think she was coming on to make sure everything was working. It seems like it's working, so we might as well get started, Barry.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Okay, well, you go ahead or I'll start. Well, first of all, thank you everyone for joining and coming to the session this afternoon that we had scheduled in our calendars way back last year, I think, or last fall. And so we're very excited to be able to join you today. My name is Jay Kopitz, and I was coming to you as my former role was Director of Schools in the Woodstock Education Center. I'm now, since March break, I've moved over to EECD, or the ministry, and I'm working there on the long-term recommendation that the government has come out with on recruitment and retention of teachers. So Barry and I are still going to do the presentation. And so go ahead, Barry, you can fill me in.
Hi, everyone.
Who you are.
Yeah, sure. My name is Barry Snyder, and I work for the New Brunswick Teachers Federation. My job is to support teachers in Anglophone Southwest and North. I also support administrators in the East and the Francophone districts. Yeah, Jay and I had kind of started this a little bit a number of years ago. I guess we started it with putting on some sessions for beginning teachers in the West, and it's grown a bit. And we had a session here in Fredericton about a year ago, about a year ago, I think.
Okay.
Anyway, for early career teachers, and it was decided then that we put another session on for you. So my I guess my desire as we go through, we have a brief PowerPoint. I think we'll have a fair amount of information, but the crowd is reasonable in terms of size, and I think we can certainly, if there's questions as we're going through, I would encourage you to ask them, and between the two of us, we should be able to find an answer for you. Does that sound good?
And if you have a question, if you want to turn your camera on and talk that way, if you haven't figured it out yet, it's going to be fairly relaxed and laid back. So you're more than welcome to turn your camera on when you're speaking, and we'll just go from there. So I'll start, and I meant to change the slides because I was taking off some of the district branding, but I will tell you that I know the West staffing process best because that's what I've done for the last 15 or 20 years, working in the different variations of the district. In Anglophone West and Anglophone East this year, they're using Fusion for posting jobs. And Craig, if I'm wrong on that, let me know. In the South and the North, you're going to be using your standard process. I believe in the North, they're still using Apply to Ed. And in the South, I believe it's SharePoint. So, but make sure that if you are a D contract teacher and you're looking for the postings, make sure that you know where those are, because they will be coming out if they have not already started in some of your districts. So good luck with that piece. We'll start with that. The biggest thing for teachers right now looking for work in the fall is to make sure that you have an up-to-date resume, have all the work you've done this year, no matter how, if you're volunteering somewhere, make sure that's on there. Your educational work that you've done, what grade levels, what classes, like I said, any kind of volunteer work you've done within the school. Up-to-date evaluations are also good. If your principal hasn't been in to do an evaluation on you this year yet, make sure they're coming in to get one. Because if you're going to a different school, you're going to want to make sure that you have that with you, or to be able to at least they can reach out and get it, because principals definitely like to look at those evaluations. And then the last thing I'll say on that is if you are a D contract and you think you're probably moving schools, make sure principals in the area know who you are. Make sure they know what you can do, and just you have to be willing to sell yourself. People in small districts, people tend to know who each other are in small communities, but if you get into larger cities like St. John, Moncton, Fredericton, sometimes it's a little more difficult. So make sure people know who you are when you're out there. So the staffing process, I know in talking to in the West, just to give you an example, so they've just recently sent out to all their school principals the FTE that the department's given them. So they base that basically on classroom, the number of classrooms. So for K-5 or K-8 classrooms now, you get 1.2 FTE per class. And then for high school, there's a fancy formula that you get, and somebody can explain that to you on another day. If you're a data person and love those kinds of things, I'm not going to get into it, but there's a way that the high school numbers are figured out by the total population of students. The first 100, and then 200 to 300 or something, and then so on after that. So the schools have those. So right now, the principals in the West are determining the vacancies that they have in their schools. So those can be given to the directors of schools, who will then post the jobs to Fusion in the West. The other 3 districts will be going through the same sort of process if they haven't already started. Like I said, FTE gets sent to the school principals. They determine vacancies within their buildings, what student needs are going to be for the fall, and those classrooms are all laid out, and any vacancies are sent into the district offices to be posted. The turnaround is usually pretty quick. Once they get them, they double check them at the district office level, and then they get posted for the D contract teachers to take a look at. And some districts do things in a little different ways, but for the most part, that's how it's done across our province. And you get to see, or you get to apply for the jobs, and then the employer in this case is the district. So in some cases, it's the principal that reaches out to you on behalf of the district, or the district reps will actually reach out to the D contract teachers themselves. For the most part, probably across the province, it's the principals that reach out, but the employer is the district. So the director of schools or the superintendent would act as the employer on the employer part. So that's kind of some high level stuff. If you, I'm going to let Barry talk about contracts, because he's the contract guy, and we have a slide for that. Barry, you can see the slide, right? Yeah, that's a good sign. Okay, I'll let you take over on this one.
Yeah, perfect. And I just want to say, Craig did put in the chat that Fusion is being used in the East. So,
Okay.
yeah. So
Okay,
thanks, Craig, for that clarification there.
Okay.
So types of contracts, yeah, just sort of going through, there's essentially 4 types of contracts. I would suggest for most certified teachers, we're probably only looking at 2. So the B contract, which is a permanent full-time position. Sorry, I said permanent full-time. You can have a B contract that's not 1.0, but it is a permanent contract, a B position. So it is a year after year position, and you're not laid off under a B contract, unless, again, there's changes to FTE, size of school, or student enrollment rather. But for the most part, the B contract, of course, is what everybody wants. The thing to remember about a B contract is it is designated at a school. So it's your B contract at a specific school. The once you get your B contract, you are designated to be at school X, whatever school that may be, and the only way to move once you're in a B contract, and I just want to clarify this because I do get this question quite often, especially this time of year. The only way for a B contract teacher to move is through the mutual transfer process. Well, I'll say the only clean way to move is through the mutual transfer process. Sometimes through disciplinary reasons, there may be movement, but we won't get into that piece today. But a B contract, you could go through the mutual transfer process. And the thing to remember is there is never an obligation on the employer side or the district side to approve a transfer. So it has to be by mutual agreement, meaning that the employer and the teacher agree. Sometimes B contract teachers, they feel like they get kind of stuck in certain schools, and I'll be honest with you, that can be the case, because there has to be an agreement from the employer to make a move, and in order to do that, in order to make a move as a B contract, there's got to be space in another area, but there also has to be a guarantee that you're going to be replaced, or there's going to be someone to replace you. So it's a fairly complicated process. It's not, if there's a D position open in another school, a B contract teacher does not necessarily have any right to that position, just so you understand that. So speaking of D contracts, of course, we have a question right away.
Okay.
Cindy, I think.
Yep.
I wanted, I'm actually one of the lucky people that was able to do a mutual transfer, and I got it on the first year that I put it in, but I know a lot of people that it takes a long time for that to happen. But I just wanted to mention too, and I know it's not necessarily a move, Barry, but just to mention, of course, that there is always the possibility of surplus Bs too, which means that you're not moving on your own, but that, you may not stay in that same building based on the numbers in your building.
Correct.
Yeah, exactly. That would be as a result of maybe declining enrollment, or something like that. That would be why a teacher may end up, B contract may end up moving from one school to another. So thank you for that clarification, Cindy. So the D contract, if we'll jump down to the D contract situation, and Jay was talking a little bit about those of you who are currently in Ds and talk about applying for positions. A D contract is a 1-year replacement. Normally it's a 1-year replacement. Again, there is a defined start and end date to D contracts, but if we're going to talk about it as though it's a September till June contract for argument's sake today. So you're replacing, generally a D contract teacher is replacing a B contract at a specific school. Your D does not have any seniority. So that's a piece that I need to kind of emphasize in terms of the hiring process. D contracts don't have any seniority. So whether you've been on a D for 1 year or 10 years, it really doesn't. Most directors, I think, take it into account, the number of years you've been on a D in terms of seniority, but there is no obligation to offer a D to one teacher over another. As it relates to seniority, at least, it would really be more about qualifications and need and that sort of thing with the school. So I need teachers to understand that right off the bat, that a D is not, they're not hired by seniority. A D with recall, so what that guarantees you is that it guarantees you a position somewhere in your district before a casual supply teacher. Having said that, there is an obligation, and Jay had referenced this, there is an obligation on your part as the teacher to apply for the positions. If you have not applied for the position, the district is not going to consider you for the job. They're going to assume you're not interested in that job. My advice has generally been to apply for as many jobs as you think you're, all of the jobs you're interested in, not just the one you might want. Because it doesn't always work, of course, that you'll get the one specific job that you think is perfect for you. So make sure you're applying for any job that you feel that you would be able to adequately perform. I'm trying to think if there's anything else related to D contracts that are, jumping out at me, but I don't think there is right off the bat. Jay, unless you think of something.
The one thing would be being qualified for the position. You mentioned applying for everything that you want or that you would like, but you also need to make sure you're qualified. So in the past, I've seen a number of people apply for French immersion positions at schools, and there is a requirement to have a certain level of French for those positions. So make sure that you have that. I think we may want to clarify a little bit the surplus position, the surplus move that Cindy brought up just a little bit. So the surplus position, so if a school has declining enrollment, so they've lost kids, they have an abundant number of teachers, so somebody has to be moved. And this is with a B contract. So B contract teacher, the lowest person on the seniority, as long as that person is not covering something that is required teachable in that school. So as an example, if Barry's the French immersion teacher and we need French immersion teachers at Caledonia High, then Barry stays because we need him. So then they just move to the next person on the list. And if it's Jay Kopitz, who's a generalist English teacher and he's not needed, then I'm the one that's moved. Barry stays, even though I have more seniority than Barry. And I would they would have to find me a position within the district. Generally, districts are very accommodating in finding something close to my home. As an employee, they do try their best for that. Our practice in the West was, and we try not to say this too much now, but the practice now was always 30 minutes from your home, because that was like, we live in a city environment, but also in a rural environment. So sometimes our schools are spread out, so it's difficult. So
Yeah,
there's a question. Chat. I was
supposed
supposed to monitor it. Okay. Hi there. Is there any way to turn on email notifications for jobs on Fusion like there was on Applied Ed? Jerry Fay, I'm not 100. I don't know much about Fusion and how that works, but that would be something I will ask HR in the districts and find that out. Thank you.
So I'll keep going down through on the other contracts.
Sounds good.
The C contract piece, which you probably wouldn't hear much about, although we're seeing them a little bit more over the last year or two. C contracts are for local permit teachers. A C contract does not have recall, just so that everybody understands that. So if you're on a C contract, there are no recall rights associated with that. An E contract, it's a special funding contract, and it would generally, we would see those with First Nations, Indigenous programs or projects. So it's usually funding that comes from outside of the normal staffing budget. So sometimes you might get funding from the band, or you might get funding from a federal initiative to hire a teacher to support First Nations or Indigenous work in a school. And quite often that would be on an E contract. So I did already talk about when does seniority come into play. So really, we talked seniority, of course, with B contracts, it does exist. And if there is a surplus, it is, as Jay said, the least senior person that's going to be surplused. The collective agreement does speak to the least senior person, provided the remaining staff can adequately fulfill the teaching requirements. So the word adequately fulfill, that wording, it doesn't mean you have to be the absolute best at teaching whatever subject area. It means you have to be able to do it. So that's often a question and that I would get. From teachers who were in that situation. It's never a good situation when surplus time happens, and certainly understand that. Often people are upset, but we do work with them and walk them through what their rights are in relation to that process and the contracts. And sometimes there are mistakes made. So my recommendation to you is, if you are in a situation where you're surplus or you have a question about that, reach out, give us a call here, and we'll certainly walk you through what your rights are and what the process should look like and how it should unfold for you. And that, again, that's going to be over the next few weeks or months as we wrap up this year. I mean, we're coming up to June here soon.
Yeah, it's gone quick. It's gone really quick. Okay, I'll go to the next slide, Barry. If there's any questions, please jump in. They've hired us to do questions and presentations, so we'll do both.
I guess I just wanted to show, I had this picture in there. It's a collective agreement. So obviously it's the agreement between the employer and the Teachers Federation. So this year it is yellow. There's limited numbers of the collective agreement that have been printed. You can get this digitally on our website, and or if you want to send me an email, I can send you a digital copy. But essentially, the collective agreement has all of your negotiated benefits within it. There is a specific article for supply teachers as well, for those of you that may still be in that position, Article 61. And I guess my recommendation as it relates to the collective agreement is take a look at it, read through it. If there are questions about it, please, same thing, reach out, because there are certain things that that have interpretations to it. So you may want to just sort of dig a little deeper if you get in a situation where you're kind of wondering about a collected or a bargained right within the collective agreement. So that slide is just basically there to say that we have one, and it is your rights, and certainly reach out and ask questions. We do have another one, Jay, in the chat. If there are 5 teachers, for example, who all receive their B contract at the same time, how would that work on the seniority piece?
Flip coin. Well, it would probably come down to the needs of the school. They would, usually there would be a certain position. So there's probably not a lot of times when you would have 5 generalist teachers who would be all hired at the same time. You may have, there may be a variety of people hired on different B contracts at the time, whether you're French immersion, math, science, or physics, chemistry, those kinds of things, or phys ed even, that you wouldn't have 5 people who are exactly the same hired at the same school, because this is school based, not district based. That would be quite a scenario. If we have, hopefully that answered your question, Lewis. Kendra Thompson asks, if we have questions about the collective agreement, is it Barry that we should reach out to, or someone else? From a district standpoint, I would say Barry would be your person you would reach out to at the Federation. You can also reach out to your principal or your director of schools as well. And you may get 3 different interpretations if you do that.
Call me.
Yeah, call Barry.
Yeah. The only thing I would say is, if you were in Anglophone East, you should call Nicole LeBlanc, but either way, reach out to one of us and we're going to get you to the right person.
Yeah. And one of the things I know, when I first started out teaching, there was always somebody in the staff room that seemed to have the collective agreement. It was always printed out and they had it rolled up and put in their back pocket, and they always seemed to have the answers. But really, Barry works with the collective agreement on a daily basis, as well as the directors of schools do. So really, if you want a solid answer on the collective agreement, reach out to, I would say, Barry, because he works in it more than the directors of schools on a daily basis.
I'm going to give you a really quick example of why you should reach out to us, because, as I mentioned before, there are a lot of interpretations. One of the interpretations that we have, or the agreements that we have with the employer, is related to bereavement leave. So, for example, if in a situation where you've suffered a loss to your spouse, your child, or your parents, a teacher is allowed to have up to 5 days for bereavement leave. What the collective agreement doesn't say, it's not written specifically there, but that leave has to be taken within 1 calendar week, within 7 days of the event, so of the death of your family member. So a lot of times, the staff room lawyers will read it and say you have 5 days and basically you take it whenever you want. But that's not the case. So in order to get bereavement, it has to be within 7 days. And that's an interpretation that's outside of the collective agreement. It's an agreement that was made with the employer. So some of those things, there are some articles that have, additional information that isn't in the collective agreement that we would be able to share with you as an interpretation and clarification for questions. So yeah, I always suggest reaching out to have that conversation first. Sometimes there are other things that we can help you with, other articles that might link to your question as well. So always reach out.
Okay.
What's next?
Important things to remember as a new teacher. I received a new teaching contract. No, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to read the same thing. So
okay.
You received a new teaching contract. So what should I do? One of the key things I would suggest, and I think Fusion is supposed to help this, but regardless, contact Johnson Insurance to inform them of any changes. And by any change, I mean if you've gone to a new school, if there's been some coverage changes related to your family needs, contact them right away. One of the things that we've seen over the last few years certainly is that, again, mistakes happen, and with the system that was being used, there's some information that's not always shared back and forth between Johnson's and the employer. I've seen teachers where they assume they have coverage and they go for a certain amount of time where they're not paying for their insurance coverage, but they're still able to use it. So for whatever reason, the deduction hasn't been taken off. So unfortunately, when that information comes to Johnson's and they realize that the error has been made, they're obviously going to the teacher to ask for that money back, and that can be quite a hit for some people. Out of the blue, you realize that all of a sudden you owe $1,200 in back premiums to Johnson's. That's certainly not easy to. Most of us don't have $1,200 that we could just hand out and give away. So make sure you communicate with Johnson so that they understand any changes you have, so they can ensure that the proper deductions are happening. I will say, in the event that something like that does happen, Johnson's is very, they're very good about working with you and supporting you and setting up plans that work for you in order to pay those premiums back. But if you can avoid it, that's what you want to do.
Yeah.
And then that bottom piece where it says check your pay stub, like, you should do that often. We've had situations where teachers have been underpaid, teachers have been overpaid, and of course it's always difficult trying to figure out and get that money back one way or the other. So check your pay stubs. The collective agreement has your rate of pay in the back, schedule G. So on the back of the collective agreement, you can see, generally what it is. And with the exception of, I forget how often it happens, but generally it's 26 pays. So if you take that big yearly number and divide it by 26, that should be approximately what you're making. Well, it should be exactly, but it should be what you're being paid every 2 weeks. So if you do the math and it does not look correct, reach out to someone and ask that question. Because if you're being overpaid or underpaid, it's obviously going to be a huge issue. Much better to be underpaid, because then you're going to get money back. If you're overpaid, the employer's going to want that money back. So always check your pay stubs.
Yeah, and one of the biggest reasons with that is there is such a turnover in the payroll departments in our districts because people are moving to other jobs. So, and everybody's, and there's a lot of input. And I know with Fusion, it's going to make some changes as long as I know we've got OnePay in there now, so we'll see how it works in the next one. But everything seems to be going all right with the two districts that have moved over so far. We have a question here, Barry, from Jared from the South. D teacher with recall, does your current school have any obligation to recall you to an open position for next year over another D teacher with recall who may apply from a different school? And the other way as well, do I, as a D teacher with recall, have any obligation to my current school to accept an open D there first over a new school?
So my answer to that is no, there's no obligation on either side.
Yeah.
My understanding from a district perspective, from the conversations I've had, is that obviously they like to keep as much consistency as they can, if possible. If a school is happy with a D teacher and a D teacher is happy at the school, then they certainly would try to keep that person there if they can, provided there's space and all those kinds of things. But no, as far as like your school does not have to offer a D contract to you. And you do not have to accept one. You have no obligation to that school either. Once your contract is done at the end of June, you are laid off, and you're on your recall, and you can apply for any open position at that point. I think the only thing I would suggest is have conversations. So have conversations with your principal, one way or the other. Sometimes, a certain school is just not the right fit for you, and that's okay. But I would have those conversations with your principal and also your director of schools, just to let them know, what your intentions are, what your plans are, just so that they can be aware. I don't know, Jay, if you have anything else you wanted to add to that piece.
No, that was exactly, I would have said the exact same thing. The biggest thing is you want to maintain a relationship with you want to talk to your principal, that your current one, and if you're looking to go somewhere else, you want to make sure you build relationships. And like as Barry said, as with districts, definitely districts want to have some stability in their schools. The less movement, the better, because you build that your team, and for the principals, it gives them another team like you, more experience for you as well, the longer you stay. But yeah, no, relationships, maintain that with your principals for sure, because you never know when you may need to go back if you leave. So you don't want to burn those bridges. Okay, so I see something in there's a notice there's a thing. Okay, it's really small, but in the chat box. Okay, I made it bigger. Opportunity Marketplace for Fusion. So they're in the chat box. There is a description of how you can turn on email notification for that. So it is in the chat box. And thank you to Wanda Jones for putting that in there. We really appreciate that. I haven't got an email back yet. So the next thing is we have this for two districts. We have the pay stubs that they're still using, and all the codes and deductions and everything on there. Like Barry said earlier, it's very important that you do check these every 2 weeks when they come in. Make sure if there is some noticeable change, don't just think like, oh, this is great, I'm gonna hold on to that extra money, because districts will find out, and they will come back looking for the funds. And in some cases, it's been fairly sizable, the amount that they have to pull back. And like Johnson's, the district payroll group usually are pretty accommodating in how fast, like they work out plans with you. So, but there's all kinds of different ways you can set your pay up. One of the best advice pieces that I was given when I started my career by the credit union, they said start a credit union account with us, of course, Teachers Credit Union. Open it up, and they said put $25 or $50 or $100, whatever you can afford, every 2 weeks. Just drop it into the account. And I know I've been doing that for almost 30 years now, and just every once in a while, if the kids have needed braces, new goalie pads, have never used it for a family vacation, but you go and get some extra cash that you just sort of completely forget, and so there's always ways you can set that all up through your payroll deductions and that kind of stuff. So there's all kinds of different things, but it's always important to check your notice of deposit.
The only thing I would say about this particular slide as well, just so everybody knows the payroll piece, when you look at the top left corner, it says earnings. It's 01 earnings. That's the number I was talking about when you divide it by the large your yearly salary. So if you look at that one right there, I think Jay's got his mouse on it there now. So that was the number that should be, if you multiply the number that would be under the amount there, multiply that by 26, you should get your yearly salary approximately. And because the net pay, which of course is the money that goes into your account, that's different for everybody because the deductions, of course, can be different for everyone depending on what you have for insurance. Some people have extra EI or income tax taken off rather. So there's all kinds of different deductions. It is the gross salary that we would be discussing should you see any kind of sudden change. One of the things to also remember, we do not randomly get raises. So if you do see an increase, there's a reason. So take a look. In this particular collective agreement, raises are occurring March and September. There are no other times that raises are occurring. And they are specific dates, but there is another one coming in September. So if you see a change, in November, ask the question, take a look and say, okay, what happened? It may be that you went up a scale, you went up a level, sometimes because your anniversary date can be different for everybody. So that could be the reason. Take a look at the deductions, make sure all the deductions came off. So just keep an eye on that at all times, just to save yourself some headaches down the road.
Yeah, exactly. We have a question in the box again from Gaetan. For D contract teachers, are we paid over the summer even if our contracts end in June? And
so
go ahead.
I would say the answer to that is yes. If you're a full-time D contract teacher, you are. The only time I would say that full-time, I mean by full year. The only time that you may not, there is a sweet spot throughout the year where it wouldn't make sense to pay you over the summer because of the residual earnings that you would receive would be so low. They would often just either pay you, and I'm talking about receiving your D contract in, Jay, help me, is it April, May, maybe?
Yeah, I think so.
March, somewhere in that. If you receive your D contract in March, April, May, you may not get paid over the summer in that situation, just because it's not going to make sense to divide it up that way. Your earnings up that way, the amount would be so small.
Okay. Because basically, a teacher is paid for 10 months' work, but they spread it over the summer months, and that's new. That's been new for D contract teachers now for a few years, because before it used to only be D or B contract teachers that got that. So I know the next slide is going to just say questions. So we've got through basically everything we wanted to talk about. Is there questions? Okay, so Diana Alward has a question. With the new AST positions that were made this year, since the district has cut some of them, what happens if you accept another D position somewhere else and then they decide to bring them back? Would you be able to go back to the original AST position? That would really, Diana, that would really be up to the district if they wanted to bring you back to that. Normally, the district would put all those AST positions out at one time, or they fill them within the schools. But sometimes, yes, they will allow you to move. But as someone who has done staffing for a number of years, generally when you land your 1.0 D position, the district is done with you, and because if not, staffing's going to go all summer. And so they just sort of, that would be, like, it would already be filled and they would move on at that point. Gaetan Landry, so then we can't claim EI over the summer, even if we aren't technically employed or have a contract. And I'm going to leave that one for Barry to answer. I know he's having another conversation, so that's fine. But I'll let Barry answer that one. And I'm going to let him answer the sick days calculated, and when should I see them in the ASOP bank? Sick days you accumulate 1.5 days per month, and so you should have those. Should be, as long as your payroll department has maintained the ASOP up to speed, they should be in there each month. And if you can't, talk to the payroll clerk that looks after your school, Amber, and they should be able to tell you how many days you have accumulated in your ASOP bank.
I think it's normal that they are a little bit behind on like whether it's a few weeks or maybe a month behind. I think it is normal that it's a little bit behind in terms of what you see in your account and what you actually have.
Yeah, I believe so too.
As far as the summer pays, so the money you've earned, and it's tricky, and I even hesitate to answer, but the money you've earned over the summer or the money you would be receiving over the summer is money you've already earned. So my belief, well, you know what, I guess what I would suggest is contact EI to get the right answer, because I don't want to say one thing and have it be wrong, and I don't want to get anybody in trouble by saying, Barry said I could do this, and and then you end up having trouble. So I would contact EI just to make sure.
Yeah. How far are they normally behind? Sometimes they could, sometimes it could be a month or two behind. It all depends on the situation within the district. Like I said, those positions, there's been a lot of rotation through those. So they could be behind a couple of months, 2 or 3 months.
And Kendra, I see you have the same calculation. You're teaching a 0.5 FTE. It's the same calculation, but it's just done at half, right? So if you're teaching 0.5, you're not going to get 1.5 sick days a month. You're going to get 0.75 sick days a month. So it's prorated depending on your percentage of FTE.
Excellent. Any further questions? The big thing is if you have questions, if you have concerns about anything, reach out to, like, in this case, I see I'm doing this presentation. So in this case, collective agreement wise, reach out to Barry or Monique in the East. In your districts, if you have a district question about staffing, reach out to your directors of schools and get the answers from them. Do unused sick leaves carry over to the next year? From Jovi.
Yes, your sick leave balance is with you as long as you're under contract. If for some reason you decide to take a year off and leave teaching for a year and then come back, whatever your accumulated sick leave was is going to come back to you. Now, you obviously wouldn't get any during the time you were off, but if you had 50 days when you left, and when you come back, your sick leave balance would be there, from what you earned while you were in the contract.
I see Kendra.
Sick leave. I guess I need to say that sick leave isn't, like, I'm going to make a suggestion to all of you. Sick leave is not something that you should say, I have a right to my 15 days and I'm going to use them every year. Sick leave is kind of like an insurance, and my suggestion to you, obviously you can use your sick leave however you feel you need to. My suggestion is treat it like an insurance. It's not uncommon to have people calling in to say, look, I've got this medical problem, or I've got this situation that's going to prevent me from being able to work, and I don't have sick leave. What do I do? And in all honesty, there is very little in the collective agreement that would allow for time off for teachers. Sick leave is one if you're not well enough to be at work. Beyond that, there's very little, maybe EI sick leave. And of course, that's not at your normal rate of pay. So when you're on sick leave, it's your normal rate of pay for the number of days you have in terms of your sick leave bank. So it's I know we always tell people, make sure you're well enough to come to school. Don't come to school sick. But at the same time, if you can treat them a little bit like it's an insurance, all the better in case you do need them later. Kendra, if you're having an issue, sorry, Jay, if you're having an issue getting in, just reach out. The login is your member number, and then there's a password that needs to be set up. But if there's any problems, let me know, and we'll get you fixed up.
And Barry, if you wanted to send me your electronic version of the collective agreement, I could send it out to them.
Sure.
Yeah. If you're out of sick days, can you still call in sick and just not get paid for that day? Also, my balance in. So if you are out of sick days, you can still call in sick for sure. You just will not get paid for that day. So what you need to do, Crystal, is you need to reach out to payroll and find out why there's a difference between the balance in Fusion and an ASOP. Keep in mind that the balance in Fusion is done in hours and in ASOP it is done in days. So I believe a teacher is in Fusion is 8 hours. So you take the total and divide it by 8, and that'll tell you the number of days that you have in Fusion. But reaching out to payroll would definitely, I think there's an email address that they have set up that you could reach out to. Just ask your principal, they could give you that address. That's been a big change, Barry, between the difference between Fusion and ASOP is that one's in hours and one's in days. Would we know if our family days is included in our sick time in Fusion on our pay stubs? No, it would not be. Family days are completely separate from sick time, and those would be in ASOP. Because if you're a teacher, which you probably are, being on here, you would need to be replaced. So that would have to go through, your family day would go through ASOP. And if it's wrong, just blame Craig, okay? He's good for it. Any other questions? Anyway,
Kendra, I noticed you did ask, where do we find our member number? It's your NBTA member number, but reach out. You can either give Sandy a call at the main reception here in our building. Send me an email. Either way, we'll get you fixed up so you know how to get into the website.
Do they still get cards, Barry? MBTA member cards?
I think so.
Okay, because the number would be on that, right?
Yes, it should be.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, they said they do, okay. Excellent. But if she's not been in, then she wouldn't have a password, so it's still not gonna work.
Yeah, we'll get you in. It's not a problem. That Sandy will fix you right up.
Excellent. Well, listen, one of the things that moving forward in my new job or my new position that I have with EECD and the long-term recommendations, I'm going to be looking after the new career or the new teacher learning community. And so moving forward, there may be some changes. We're not sure where we're going with everything yet. Everything's going to be looked at over the summer, but we're still going to have a new teacher learning community, and we'll be still working with new career teachers. Hope to get out to different districts and especially when things are going on and different sessions are happening. We're still going to offer different things online for you. So please make sure you jump on. This very well attended today, very much appreciated. And I really appreciate the fact that Barry's given up his time to come on with us today. He and I have done, as he mentioned, a few different ones, and love presenting with Barry, and we always seem to have fun. But it's better face to face because we're better face to face, trust me. But we're just a couple of boys from Albert County who are making their way in the world, and we're really enjoying ourselves. So thank you again to everyone for coming out this afternoon. There's about a little over a month left. For those of you that are in the high schools, I know your class days are a little shorter. No one needs to point that out because we have a number of elementary teachers on here that the classrooms are going to get warmer and the little ones are going to get wild. So please enjoy yourself, and thank you for coming out this afternoon with Barry and I. We really appreciate it.
Great. Yeah. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. And my dog never barked once. It's great. Okay, Mr. Snyder, thank you very much.
All right. Thanks, Jay. Thanks, everyone.
Okay.
Take care.
Okay, take care.